Welcome back to my channel. We're going to be taking a deep dive and introducing a new series. This series we've titled it 21 Weeks of Prime. Why is that? We're going to be taking a deep dive into the 21 chapters of Coach Prime's new book, Elevate and Dominate, 21 Ways to Win on and Off the Field. So we're going to be taking a deep dive as to how we can learn from this book. Today we're going to be focusing on the introduction. But before we take a deep dive into the introduction and also the forward, basically you're going to be able to tune in and join us live every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Right, every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, you're going to be able to join us on a live YouTube, session where we're going to basically analyze and also have a conversation about Coach Prime's new book, and also just learn every week. So that way, there's no pressure. You just literally have to go get your book, right? You can find it on Amazon and your local bookstores all around the nation, right? So just get yourself a book and read one chapter, right? We know we're all busy, so we're just gonna read one chapter, a week, analyze it, annotate it. Let's figure out what we can learn from it, right? So join us every Friday at 8 p.m. for 21 weeks of Prime. Welcome back. So now let's take a deep dive into the forward page and the introduction page for this week, right? And going forward, we'll be doing chapter by chapter live, so that way we can have a lot of interested individuals that have also bought and read, are starting to read the book, join us and just give us insight as to what are the life lessons that they're taking away from this book on a weekly basis, and also being able to implement it in their lives, right? So for me, when I took a deep dive and I read this, I'm an avid learner. I love to learn, all things and anything. So when I learned about this book, I was eager to pick it up and just see, just see what it's about and just get to know the man, right? Beyond everything that we see on the social media platform and stuff like that. So, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I first saw that the forward was written by Maxwell, I thought because of Coach Prime's relationship, it was Maxwell, the R&B singer. But then I had to do some research and figured that Maxwell's actual last name was Rivera, but his first name was Gerald, so it definitely wasn't him. And then it came to mind that it was John C. Maxwell, right? The pastor, the American author, speaker that has actually written books that I've read, and it's been books about leadership. And one of the books I remember reading was like the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and I think the other one was like the 21 indispensable qualities of a leader. If you haven't read that, try to see if you can find it on Amazon somewhere, and those are good books to read. And I sort of like it because it's the fact that the forward was written by John C. Maxwell, and his books that are the two books that I've read are like the 21 indispensable qualities of a leader, 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. I like that Coach Prime sort of like went with the team, like the 21 ways to win on and off the field. You see the synergy there. It's just I pick up on little things like that, right? So, but let's take a deep dive, right? Before we go into like each chapters, I love to read the book cover to cover. So I take a deep dive and started to read the forward, right? The forward page. And the fact that it was written by John C. Maxwell, I was also curious, right? you know, do they have a relationship going into this? Was it just some an individual that was selected that could possibly give Coach Prime's book some je ne sais quoi as it's coming to the market? Like, why was he the one that was chosen to write this forward? Right? And I started to take a deep dive, and then I discovered that they actually had a relationship, right? And this is a relationship that was basically highlighted and has been developed over the years, even before this book was ever written. But there was something that John C. Maxwell said, um, that I'm reflecting on, and I continue to reflect on. As a fan of the game of football, it's something that I've always wanted to do. It's like, hey, when I meet Coach Prime, I would love to just, get him to sign this autograph for me and this. And also when I got myself this book, I was like, man, if I'm gonna meet, whenever I meet him, I'll be sure to make sure I have this book and have it signed, right? But when I read the forward, John C. Maxwell made mention of his experience about when he stopped at Walmart to get the footballs, right? And he sort of had this intention to just go and make sure that those footballs are signed and while he's there and stuff like that. But a comment that Coach Prime said to him about him not wanting to get anything signed after John C. Maxwell has sent him some books made John C. Maxwell change his mind, right? And when I read that, I sort of reflected and said, you know what? I would just love to spend some time with Coach Prime beyond the cameras, like no cameras, nothing, just be in his presence, learn from him, garnish from him, and just get insights as to how he's been able to navigate this thing called life and how he sort of positioned himself to be a leader, a positive role model, and also just someone, an individual that people can look forward to for a few decades now, right? So if I ever have that opportunity, it's something that I would definitely leverage to make sure that I just, put the phone away, put the camera away, and just sit one on one and just like learn as much as I can learn in whatever minute or time that I'm able to be in the presence of him. And also, just in the presence of individuals that I believe I can learn from also. Just be in the present and beyond wanting to like get something, you know, that will make people know that, hey, I met this person, right? Beyond wanting to get that publicity or that notoriety, just learn and try to absorb as much knowledge from them going forward. So when I read that, that was something that stood out to me in the forward. So as we move on to the introduction, right? The introduction in Coach Prime fashion, it started with, hey baby, right? It's Coach Prime. When I read that, I could just like sort of like visualize it in his own words, and with the swag and everything that comes with just saying, "Hey, baby, it's Coach Prime," right? And so but in that first page of the introduction, there's something that certainly stood out to me is the fact that he poised us to do a self-reflection, right? And in self-reflection in to ourselves as the reader of the book, right? Saying, hey, do you feel like the best part of your life is just passing you by, right? And then fast forward, it says, do you have a plan and what is it, right? So no matter what's your plan in life, you sort of have to just sit back and say, hey, like, do I is life passing me by, right? And is there a way for me to change this? Do I have a plan? And if I do have a plan, what is it, right? And how do you attack your day, right? And then ended by saying, let's get straight to it. I'm a coach. I want to be your coach, right? So basically saying, you're not in this alone. I'm here to be your coach and give you life lessons along the way. So reading on past the introduction, if there's something else that also stood out to me was where he said that the result, he highlighted the game plan and sort of the experiences that they've gone through while from Jackson State to Boulder. And, he said, uh, you know, he stated that's the result of our game plan, right? I want you in the end zone, celebrating your accomplishments. We are going after this aggressively, right? We are not choosing the safe route, right? And I sort of highlighted that. And I said, there's, it's sort of letting us know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? And sometimes in order to get to that light, you need to make sure you do something, you challenge yourself, right? And you don't necessarily choose the safe route because the safe route, like he, in his own words, it says, trust me, safe ain't it, right? You know, comfort zone, safe. It's not it. You have to sacrifice something. You have to be aggressive, right? And yeah, like they say now, you have to stand on business, right? So that's something that stood out to me as I kept reading along, and you know, when I kept reading along, you know, I was like, how can I sort of like learn from this and sort of like, extrapolate certain things and that, and I noticed that the shared similarities in the way that I go about things myself. And Coach Pam in his book said, passion, it focuses on passion and highlighted that that's my purpose, right? That's my passion and that's my purpose. And also for me, I've always said two P's also, like growing up, it's a mantra that I've always highlighted is two P's. But for me, growing up, it was also being profession, right? And passion, right? And the mantra was always been, I shall use my profession to fuel my passion, right? Let me say that again. I shall use my profession to fuel my passion, right? So basically, in this day and age, you might have a profession, right? That is bringing that revenue, right? In, and then you use it to fuel what you're actually passionate about, right? And hopefully what you're passionate about can then become something that can become your profession going forward. That's just something that I loved and highlighted for myself also. You know, and then one thing that he also said was everyone can benefit from a good coach, right? Everyone can benefit from a good coach, right? And when I thought about that, I sort of like reflected and said, yes, that is true, And for me, growing up, I had the understanding of like humans are fallible, right? And no one is perfect, right? So one thing that I always try to do is beyond like religious mentors and in that religious atmosphere as it relates to non-religious, I try not to associate one person as just like my one and only mentor, right? I sort of highlight and identify multiple people that I call board of directors, right? So I don't call them mentors. I call them board of directors. Just because, the one of the reasons is because for me, a board of directors have the opportunity to be able to have special skill sets that they bring to the table, right? So I might look at this individual as, oh, when it comes to this line of subject matter, this is someone that has done it and has done it well, that I can garnish something from them. And it allows me to then have board of directors of different ethnicities, different walk of life, different age, because I can learn from any and everyone. And also, I'm just picking the good things, right, from them, right, and then owning it and sort of developing my own way, right. So that way, no one person feels the pressure of, being perfect in order to be my mentor or to be on my board of director. It's like, hey, just teach me the one good thing that you're good at. That when someone wakes you up, you always get it right. And then I take that one thing from this person take it from that person, take it from that person, and sort of try to be my own man going forward. You know, so reading further, if there's one thing that also stood out, is sort of when he says, "So why should I be your coach? You're right. I'm flawed. I'm flawed, surely imperfect, right? And still trying to get things right myself." And that sort of talks about what I just said previously and how I sort of go about my thing. It's like, yo, there's no one perfect, right? Even the coach and the mentor in this book is already letting us know in the introduction. Like, I am flawed. I'm a human being. I'm flawed. I'm not perfect. But in me not being perfect, there's certain things I can still teach you, right? There's certain things that you can still learn and garnish from me, right? So I certainly really love that about the introduction, and that stood out. Um, so moving forward, when under like the roads to coaching, when I read that, something that stood out was when he told his mom at a very young age that I was going to make a lot of money one day, right? So much that she would get to retire and wouldn't have to work another day in her life, right? I said this with great confidence, right? And in my head, I'm like, man, that is, I believe, right? The I believe that the Colorado Buffaloes have on the front of the workout jerseys and at the back of their backpack, and it's all over the university campus and marketing materials and all that good stuff. Coach Prime has embodied that ever since he was a little kid, like saying, I believe, and he was confident about it, and it was all about how is he going to execute aggressively in achieving that, right? So it's just when I read it, and I'm like, hey, with conviction, I believe, right? And I believe we're all going to achieve success as long as we work out of it, right? So moving forward moving along. Um, one thing that also stood out was, when he said, he's always been driven, to do, and know more, right? So he's always has that inquisitive nature, right? And in that page, I sort of, read when he talked about, being a retired football player and a father, and watching on the sideline as the coaches were sort of like coaching his son, and noticing that those kids were at the the realm and close to getting concussion, and then he went in and sort of like educated them on how to do a little better and figured out that, hey, I can do it better going forward. And if you've heard a lot of Coach Prime's pressers and stuff like that, you can definitely say that story has been consistent over the years. So it's certainly nice that it was also reflected in the introduction, sort of preface why what got him into coaching, right? And then if there's one thing that also stood out was when he said he started Truth, right? We all know his organization Truth, and one thing that I loved about that I sort of highlighted also was the fact that the kids that were involved in Truth can play football, basketball, baseball, and also do cheer, run track and field and stuff like that. So for me, I was like, from inception, right, on his road to coaching, he's always preached being versatile, right, and diversification of skill set, right? And he's always preached that until today. If you notice, his player, Dylan Edwards, was encouraged to go become a track athlete also. Now the gentleman is playing football and also running track, right? you know, so, and along those lines, in order for them to participate in truth, they had to meet like a certain, grade point, average and stuff like that. So to me, what stood out there was just, you set the expectations early, and the kids certainly know this is what, they need to do to be able to achieve that going forward. Um, the other thing that stood out, was, you know, him stating that, you know, they were raising those kids to be CEO, right? And along those lines, it sort of just stood out that he's been using football as a tool. Let me say that again. He has been using football as a tool to raise young men into leaders, into world leaders in whatever field they might find themselves in the future, right? So from inception, he's using football as a tool to raise young men and women. And moving along in the introduction, one thing that I loved that also stood out was the introduction that was made early to give us insight into his failure, right? So just sort of like prefaced it, right? When he was talking about Prime Prep Academy, and he said, we'll talk more about it in chapter 18, right? And that also then just give you an insight as to, hey, this gentleman, this man, this coach, this mentor is not perfect, right? There's been times in his life where he's tried to execute on something and has failed, right? But he never let that failure hold him back, right? It's okay to fail. Failure is part of growth. Failure is part of process. So I loved that in the introduction. It was sort of like we were sort of like giving that understanding and sort of like, hey, there's throughout this journey I failed, and you will learn about it at a later time. Yeah. So moving forward, he also then talked about, how he sort of like got ready to get into coaching, and how they made the plan, and how, various individuals just like Mr. Constant, Miss Constant, from Smack Entertainment, and also the gentleman, Pretty Tony, sort of were there, right? And to me, I felt like those two individuals, like I said previously, are sort of like his board of directors, right? To some extent, they serve as his coaches, right? His mentor, right? And it also relates to what we just talked about in terms of like everyone needs a coach, right? Even a coach needs a coach, right? So it's certainly a beautiful thing that was I liked it. And one thing that also stood out was FSU and Arkansas. I'm sorry, I'm just going to throw this. Imagine what would have happened if Coach Prime was coaching at FSU or Coach Prime was coaching at Arkansas. But like I said, you know, we plan, God planned, and God is certainly the best of planners, right? So, you know, let's move along with the introduction. One thing that I also noticed as I was reading is he's been all about like service to others, right? When he talked about, one thing that he loves to do is he's a fixer, right? Something that needs to be solved, something that needs to be fixed, something to be addressed, first thing every day that he goes to work, right? And just wanting to be a part of the solution and serving others, right? That sort of resonates, right? And if we move along, um, so one thing that I also sort of like that resonated was when he was talking about how he was able to get like new locker rooms through PNG, and also like resurfacing Jackson State tennis court and track and field facilities, and also bringing in speakers and developing a speaker series, and all the different partnership with Aflac, Walmart, and all that good stuff, right? So if there's one thing that stood out to me was, yes, he was a football player, he was a football coach, right? But in the words of John F. Kennedy, right? Rising tide lift all boats, right? As the football program was becoming successful, more prominent in the media, right? All other athletes were benefiting. And it's the same thing at Colorado. all other athletes were benefited, right? And all other community members were benefited from the growth and the success and the prime effect, as you may call it. So I love that that was highlighted here. So as we move on to your personal navigation system, something that stood out to me there was you know being you know like he's experienced, right? He has experience not only as a player, not only as a father. He also has experience as someone, like he stated. I was recruited, right? I've also been the guy coaching in college, plus I've been the father of kids who were recruited and coached, right? So that gives me a tremendous competitive advantage, right? So it's like they say, you can't, the only the person that has been there can read you there to a certain extent, right? So the man knows every gamut of everything as it relates to the world of football. So why not listen to him? You know. So uh so if there's something else that stood out to me, was also towards the end of the introduction, where Coach Prime said, when I set out to write this book, my hope was that you would read it with pen in hand, taking notes, underlining key sentences, writing things in the margins. That's the way I consume my favorite books. I'm constantly underlining passages and putting stars next to important statements. I hope you underline this whole book, right? So I sort of underlined that aspect of things of the book, and also I've just, been taking his advice, right? And that's what we're going to basically do on 21 Week of Prime, is just sort of underline and annotate and analyze and have a conversation about what are some of the key lessons that we can garnish from this book. So join us as we take Coach Prime's idea and advice in marking up this entire book and writing in the margins, and taking notes, and just sort of like annotating and underlining and developing insights from the book and so forth. So 8 p.m., it's just going to be a 30-minute session. So join us 8 p.m. for the next 21 weeks. We're going to be doing 21 weeks of Prime and taking it one chapter at a time. So if you haven't bought your book yet, be sure to do so and join us 8 p.m. Eastern, right? And it's going to be a live conversation.